Since releasing Guerrilla Filmmaker, we've had a few requests from people asking for tips and tutorials on how to use the app. So I thought instead of just going and making another how-to video, the best idea would be to go out and make a short film with it and try to show you how I did it. I happened to be staying out in the countryside for a few days, so I had access to some really nice scenery, some nice forests, but what I didn't have was any people. I didn't have any crew, any collaborators. But what I did have was Guerrilla Filmmaker, which, as we like to say, is a film crew in your pocket. So I thought, what the hell, I'll just go out and make a one-man movie, which meant that I would be operating the camera as well as acting. I say acting in the loosest sense of the term. With Guerrilla Filmmaker, I'm able to create automated sequences for focus, exposure, zoom, whatever I like. I can pre-program in my sequence steps. I can then just start recording, play back my sequence, and act while recording hands-free. First, a quick note on the equipment I used. Everything was shot on an iPhone 6 with the Moondog Labs anamorphic lens adapter. I used the quad-lock iPhone case and 3 quad-lock tripod adapters. So I had one attached to a tripod, one to a slider, and one to a stabilizer. And that way I could just quickly change the camera between each of these things. But as I wanted to use the Moondog Labs anamorphic lens adapter, I needed to make a slight Guerrilla hack to the quad-lock case, and I cut the corner off just to fit it on. I also picked up this cheap graduated ND filter that I thought it would be quite fun to experiment with. Near the beginning of the long Sunday afternoon, I use a Vertigo shot, or what's also known as a dolly zoom, similar to this one in Jaws, only on a slightly lower budget. To create this shot, I need to track in with the slider while zooming out with the app at the same time. So here's my setup. In true low-budget guerrilla filmmaking fashion, I just tied a piece of string to the end of my slider, wrapped it around the ball head, and I created a very crude pulley system. In Guerrilla Filmmaker, I set up a very simple automated zoom sequence. I use the lossless zoom functionality so that I won't lose any picture quality, and I start by zooming all the way in. I add this as my first step in my automated sequence. I then add a waiting step, and then I zoom all the way out, and I add this as the final step in the zoom sequence. I changed the waiting duration to 5 seconds to give me enough time to get ready after kicking off the automated sequence. I then changed the zoom duration to 4 seconds, which is the same as in Jaws. So now all I have to do is start recording, kick off my automated sequence, use the pulley system to track in over 4 seconds while it automatically zooms out at the same time, and this creates the Vertigo effect. While I'm at it, I might as well save the sequence so that I can easily use it again later. I'll just call it Vertigo. So now I'm out in the woods and I'm ready to shoot. First thing I want to do is check my white balance. At the moment it's set to auto white balance, but you may notice that the ground looks a little bit magenta. This is because the auto white balance mechanism doesn't know what's in the scene, it just knows that it's very green. So it's trying to overcompensate by adding a magenta tint. You can see this in the value of the tint slider at the bottom, where a positive tint value indicates that a magenta tint is being added, and a negative tint value indicates that a green tint is being added. So let's switch to manual white balance, and that way we can pull back that magenta tint and get a much more natural looking scene. So in this shot, which I like to think of as a homage to the Coen Brothers film Miller's Crossing, I want us to go from a slow treetop tracking shot and then tilt and whip pan to a medium shot of my protagonist, i.e. me. The challenge with this shot is that there is a noticeable exposure difference between the bright sky and the much darker forest floor. Again, with Guerrilla Filmmaker, I was able to set up an automated sequence, this time with exposure, that would allow me to do this all in one continuous take. First I add to my sequence the exposure levels for the forest floor, and then I adjust for the skylight level and add this as the sequence step. I add a waiting step, rearrange these steps so that it'll be sky, waiting, forest floor. I change the waiting duration to 10 seconds for my treetop tracking shot, and then I change the duration of the exposure change to 2 seconds so that the change will happen gradually as I do the camera movement, and hopefully you won't even notice it. I use the ND filter on the non-forest scenes to try to bring out a bit of definition in the sky. Once again, in the spirit of no budget guerrilla filmmaking, I just hung the ND filter off the end of the Moondog Labs lens. And as you can see from this shot where it fell off, what a difference it really makes to this dull overcast day. Next time I do something like this, I'd like to make my own little matte box to hold the filter. You can also tell that it's quite a cheap filter because it adds a color cast to the image, a kind of cool tone. But I actually quite liked the look, so I didn't try to color correct, I just went with it. I thought it suited the film quite well. So thanks for watching this behind the scenes. I'd like to do some more detailed ones in the future, and I hope this has given you some ideas of what you can do and go out and make something.